Predatory animals watch and stalk their prey for a long, long time, looking for that weakest link. Inmates do this as well. They will watch officers, how officers act, and they see how the officers behave, and they watch how the officers exhibit their behavior. And when they find that weakest link, that's when they either attack that officer for contraband, inmate manipulation tactic, or attack that officer in an escape plot and hurt that officer or harm that officer. Command of presence or command presence in corrections is very important. Folks, we want you to know your job, you know your policies and procedures, but why don't you stop a lot of things before it ever happens with command presence? Now, not only the officers on the front line, but we want our supervisors to have command presence. I'm going to talk about both. I'm going to talk about officers having command presence, and I'm going to talk about a supervisor who is responding to an inmate complaint that you did something wrong. And if that sergeant doesn't have command presence and take charge of the inmate will take over that sergeant. And then if the sergeant gives in, that is not a good thing. Hi, I'm Gary York, True Prison Stories. Please subscribe if you like this video. Now, command presence starts right off with the way you carry yourself, the way your uniform looks. Is it all wrinkly and dirty and looks like you slept in it for hours? Do you have a sharp-looking uniform? Do you carry yourself in a manner that the inmates can sense? Because remember, predatory animals watch for weaker animals. Inmates watch to see how you carry yourself in the same manner. Lots of times they will avoid you if you carry yourself well. Now, you don't have to be cocky, arrogant. I'm not talking about that. Just show that you're alert and you have your head on a swivel. And then the next step is when the inmates ask you for something and you tell them, no, you can't have that, or you're not allowed to have that, that your command presence tells them that your no is serious and it's not open for discussion. Then they will leave you alone. Of course, you're going to give them the items they need, but when they ask for extra items or beg, a begging inmate, oh my gosh, come on, CO, please, I know it's not till tomorrow night when we get issued soap or we get issued toothpaste, but come on. And one way of stopping that is command presence. Go to their cell and search their cell. When you find the toothpaste in their cell that they're asking you to give to them a day early, and you say, oh, tomorrow we pass out toiletries and you still have toothpaste, you can shut them up that way. Let them know that you're actually going to go to their cell and look in there and see if they have things. And lots of times the ones begging for more things are the ones that have it stocked up in their cell. Now you've done two things. You've shown the inmate your command presence. You mean business. No means no. But you've also let them know. You've also gotten yourself a cell search, which who knows, you may discover something that you need to get out of there. So it works really well to get these inmates to understand who the boss is. Now, when you're a weak officer and you give in, and after telling the inmate no 5 times, you finally give it to the inmate. Why do you give it to the inmate? Maybe you're thinking, if I give this to the inmate, they'll get out of here and I don't have to listen to him anymore. Well, you just created yourself a big problem, because now they're going to look to you as a weak link. The inmates are also going to tell other inmates, well, just bug him long enough. He'll get so damn sick and tired of you bugging him, he's going to give in and give it to you. Okay? So the first officer I described shuts them down, tells them no, and then goes and searches the cell. They get the message who's in charge. The second officer gives in because he's tired of the nagging. Well, you don't have to have the inmates nagging. When you tell them no means no, and if you don't want to listen to me, move aside, and I'm going to check your cell out. And it's good to check their cell anyway. Random cell searches, right? We need to do those anyway. We need to get them on record. And it's a win-win situation when you have command presence. I'm in charge, you're not. Now I've done a few extra steps to let you know who's in charge. Now come back next time and beg me for something you're not supposed to have, or you're not supposed to get until tomorrow. It sounds mean, folks, to some people out there that are not in corrections, but if you're not behind the wire on that front line, you don't know what correctional officers go through with manipulating inmates, always trying to get a one-up on the officer. Now let's talk about the sergeants now. An inmate says, well, I've already put my complaint into the sergeant, you don't let me do this, and I'm going to get the sergeant to do it for me. Well, if you have a good sergeant with command presence, that sergeant will walk up and talk to you. What's this inmate's problem? Well, Sarge, this inmate wanted this, this, and this. He's not allowed to have it. And then, when I searched his cell, he's got extra of this, this, and this anyway. Or you didn't search his cell. You just tell the sergeant, the inmate wants this, this, and this, and I told him no. The sergeant will talk to you first. Then a good sergeant, knowing you did the right thing, will go to the inmate. What is it you want, inmate? That officer won't let me have this. He won't let me have that. Well, good. You do what the officer tells you to do, and don't bother me anymore. Now, if it's something serious, a good supervisor, a good leader will know what they need to do. But a good supervisor will let the officer run the dorm and back up the officer when the officer's right. We know darn well if you're doing something wrong, we can't back you up in every situation. But if you're doing your job, and there are gray areas here and there, just because you fall into a little gray area doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. We don't want you to get in trouble for that. You're doing your job as best you can. Now, the sergeant has now exhibited, he or she, command presence. I am a supervisor, yes, but this officer runs a dorm. Don't cry to me and try to get me to change this officer's decision. If everybody is working together like a well-oiled machine, then the inmates will soon realize we can't get away with shit on this shift. So let's wait till the next shift where there's a weak sergeant and a weak officer. And let's hope there isn't a weak sergeant and a weak officer on the next shift. But this is the mindset the inmates are thinking. We won't mess with this shift. We're going to move on to the next shift. They're weaker. So everybody on every shift works like a fine, well-oiled machine with command presence. And it's going to save a lot of trouble. Now, if you're a sergeant that comes down, and folks, those of you out there, you may have seen this before, and the sergeant walks right past you and your partner, if you're lucky enough to have one with staff shortages, and goes straight to the inmate. Inmate, what's going on here? And you're standing there like, what in the heck is going on? And the next thing you know, the sergeant is talking for a long period of time with the inmate, and then you actually see the sergeant laughing. And then the sergeant comes back and says, you know what, he didn't get his shower on time, he missed it by a minute or two. Go ahead and cut him out of his cell and let him take a shower. Man, that sergeant has just become a joker in the eyes of the inmate. The inmates know, man, we can get that sergeant to overturn what the officer said. And that sergeant has made you look like a joker, because now the inmates won't respect you, because they figure if you tell them to do something and they don't want to, they'll just get that weak sergeant. So you're not weak. You're an officer on the front line. You're trying to get them to do the right thing. And this sergeant just came by, didn't even ask you what's going on, got all his information from the inmate, went back and told you to give him a shower. And you're standing there like, don't you want to hear my side of it? And then the sergeant might go, well, yeah, okay, go ahead and tell me. Well, the sergeant should have asked the officer first what's going on. This stuff happens. That type of sergeant has no command presence And he'll have no respect from who? No respect from the officers. And definitely laughed at by the inmates after he leaves because he's a joker. So command presence is when you look sharp and act sharp, and you are trustworthy and you're honest and you say what you mean and you mean what you say, officers or supervisors, and you do not give in to begging inmates, and you do not let them get away with little things that soon build up and in their eyes make you a target as a weak officer. I think I've said enough for you to get the message across. Command presence, do your job, follow the rules, know your policies and procedures, and by God, don't give in to the inmates. That's exactly what they want you to do. Thank you very much. Gary York, True Prison Stories. Please subscribe.